I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans. And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field. Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We could even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
Look at that. It's the Beat Reporters here on a Thursday, October 30th. Happy Halloween, gentlemen. Happy Halloween weekend, I should say. And to all of our listeners, welcome to the Northwest Bank Studios for the Beat Reporters. I'm Jake Brend, joined by Ben Hutchens and Rob Gray. How we doing, guys?
Doing okay.
Fantastic.
Good to see you. Good to
You'll
see
never
you all.
guess. You'll never guess what I rewatched today.
Oh, Oh man. That's
Maybe
a loaded
you will
question.
guess it. Maybe
That
you will
is
guess.
a loaded question. Heat.
No, we're talking 2024 Big 12 championship game. I've made it.
Oh, okay.
I've made it through the first quarter, and at that point, I don't think it would be classified as a horror movie for Cyclone fans. It was more of a
pretty good.
more of a thriller. And then I think we're gonna get into the horror section in the second, third, and fourth quarters.
So C-Dub and I were talking about this. It might air on TNT. I don't know. They were recording a lot of our conversation, but you can almost take nothing from that Big 12 championship last year because of no Sam Leavitt, no Cam Scadaboo. I mean, heck, Tyson wasn't even out there last year, so it feels like these two teams did not play in the Big 12 championship last year. And maybe that's injury, maybe it's just where the two teams currently stand, but it doesn't feel tabbed as the Big 12 title rematch like it might have felt preseason. Maybe that's just me, though.
No, I agree. In fact, I've even stopped really mentioning it in any of my stories leading up to the game. I might in my game day story again, just with the little caveat about how the Big 12 is now. That, boy, when you think you figured it out, who's going to be at the top? Cincinnati happens, Houston happens, Iowa State and Arizona State get hit by massive amounts of injuries at key positions, and here we are. You're right. There's really very few through lines. I mean, from last season to this season, I guess Rocco's the starting quarterback still, but Ben Bramer, but he didn't play much in that. So, yeah.
Maybe we'll see, Kenny Dillingham going for it in similar situations. That was a big thing in that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just doesn't feel like any of the buzz that we thought this matchup would maybe have when we looked at it in the preseason. And that's also just the Big 12ing. I mean, Colorado was in that four-way tie for first, and they're no longer, eyeballs were on them all of last season, and now they're not even a national story. So BYU might be the only team that's kind of refound itself from that 10-2 Big 12 last year.
Yeah. Yep. This wasn't really even on the rundown, but I think it speaks so much to what the future of the Big 12 could possibly look like. And I think what makes it still somewhat of an intriguing league for a coach to be. Like, I know you're not going to have this necessarily the same NIL resources. You're not going to have as easy as access to the college football playoff each year. But realistically, what's more likely? Are you as a coach at Wisconsin or Maryland or schools like Northwestern, are you more likely to finish top 4 in the Big 10 or go to the Big 12? And I don't know. You look up and down. You mentioned it, Rob. Cincy, Houston are here this year. Colorado last year. I don't know. It makes the Big 12 fascinating year in, year out because it's a coach cliche of we show up on media days. Here in the SEC, we believe any of these teams can win it. But at the end of the day, 10 of these teams probably have no shot. Where in the Big 12, I feel like genuinely every teams, 16 through 1 each year has a shot in it. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it is.
What else is pretty fun is Jeff Kelderman and Kelderman Manufacturing. We can't just single out Kelderman as much as we would love to. We'll single out his business, though. One of the best manufacturing businesses in the country. He's got connections all around of just crazy people that he's connected to, and it's, I'd guess, because he's so good at what he does and just a cool guy. He'll handle all your manufacturing needs for signage, for trucks. Like the Halloween, it's probably a little too late to get him in for Halloween, but any Halloween signage that you'd want to put in your yard, I mean, Kelderman would be the first place I would call. Give Kelderman Manufacturing your business, and while you're there, go check out his YouTube channel, Kelderman Manufacturing, and check out all of the crazy stuff he's up to. Thanks to Kelderman Manufacturing for sponsoring the Beat Reporters here in the Northwest Bank Studios. We've got a few football topics for you today. We've got a few basketball topics. We're going to start, of course, with football, as we are still primarily in football season, even though by the time we talk next week, we'll have a regular season basketball game concluded. But it's still football season, and it's a very, very, very important game for Iowa State on Saturday to just keep this thing on the rails, like it already is a little bit off the rails. But Arlington, like we already talked about, is off the table. There's not going to be an Arizona State-Iowa State rematch in the Big 12 championship this year. And with that not to play for, how do you guys think Iowa State responds having that big goal that everyone had really off the table?
I really appreciated the way Rocco talked about, this, and after the loss to BYU, he came out and said it. He said, "Hey, Arlington's pretty much out of reach at this point." And Rocco said, you have to speak truth to the team. You have to be real with them and find another rallying point, find something else to rally around. And I heard, the seniors, we got to rally around the seniors. I heard somebody say, we just got to finish strong, kind of a generic goal. And I think this is going to be an interesting test. Carson Hansen said after the game, it's going to be a true test of character. What kind of motivation Iowa State is able to bring into this Arizona State matchup. And I think this team's built for it, guys. I just think this team is too veteran. Rocco Becht is a leader of all leaders. I think he is going to have this team in the right headspace. I don't think that motivation is going to be a problem for the Cyclones, but it is certainly going to be interesting to see what it looks like, because this team hasn't lost a whole lot. The guys in this locker room aren't used to this situation.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few who experienced 2022, whether on the bench or on the field, but it's a good point. They haven't, and also, I mean, as Coach Campbell said, I know it's cliche and maybe it feels like a little bit of coach / rah-rah talk, but when you say they don't flinch, they don't quit, you see it in the way these guys are trying so hard in these losses. I mean, you come out, you really have a chance to bury BYU in that game, but the bad interception happens, and you get the specialty. I mean, penalties again, tough times. I mean, this team is almost trying too hard to a fault, yes. Versus just playing the game. And a few weeks ago, they were talking about getting back to, quote, playing fast and free. That happened at times, right, versus BYU, but then at other times that old shoot yourself in the foot thing came out but it's like they were using a howitzer for it. So I agree, Ben, that this team has too many good leaders to allow things to snowball. But again, Iowa State is built to play in close games. And when you have failed to execute in key moments of these 3 straight losses, it's hard for that to not be in the back of your mind. And I've tried to ask questions about that, and, is it there? Who knows? They say it's not, but it's hard for it not to be there. And I fully believe they'll play really good football for a good amount of Saturday's game, but is it good enough in the key moments for them to overcome, again, an Arizona State team without a starting quarterback? So we'll see. I mean, I think the Cyclones are equipped to do it, but the question is, will they do it?
I think another aspect, what did Taylor Mauser say about Rocco Becht? He hates to lose more than he loves to win. I know that's true of me. Like, the feeling of a loss is so much worse than the feeling of a win is good. And I would guess a lot of the football team is wired that same way too. So, especially immediately after a game like on Saturday against BYU, when you do realize those Big 12 hopes are dead, it's going to be depressing. It's going to be hard to swallow. But when you run out the tunnel on Saturday and you've got the adrenaline of the crowd and the Big 12 title rematch, I still think that competitive spirit outweighs anything. And that competitive spirit is, no matter what, we're not losing this game. And granted, Arizona State's the same way, and they've got something to prove on the other end. It's just, do they have the ability to stick around in this game and make Iowa State make mistakes? And I would say yes, they do have that ability. Can they do it? That's a whole nother question. It certainly feels like Iowa State's due to actually play to their level and put a team away.
Yeah, I don't think you rush for 184 yards on over 5 yards of carry against BYU without wanting it. Like, Iowa State, is out there trying to impose its will, and for 3/4 maybe of that game, it was. I don't think it's a motivation problem or it's a imposing your will problem. I think it's just been to beat the dead horse here, an execution problem in the final sections of the field in the red zone when the moments are the brightest.
No doubt. And look at the way they moved the ball in these 3 games. I mean, I think I looked it up. It was 470 plus yards of offense and an average of 24.7 points per game. That just
unreal.
That speaks to not executing in key moments. I mean, that is, I think, glaring a statistic that illustrates that. When you pile up that kind of yardage, it's usually kind of name your score. And while the Cyclones did score 30 and 27 in 2 of those games, the 17 against Colorado, I mean, that's Colorado's only Big 12 win, guys, and it might be the only one they get. And that's the one that I think is really going to haunt. Taylor Mauser talks about losses haunting him. I think that's the one that's really going to haunt this team, regardless of how they finish, because it's all right there for them to still have an excellent season. I mean, they could very well win out. It's going to be at TCU's tough, and all that. But, even if they only have an 8-win regular season, well, you got a chance to get to, I mean, there's a lot to play for, and that one I think was the real kicker, because even if last week goes the way last week goes, there's still hope for those larger goals and all that, and that was just a real clunker of a game over in Boulder.
Yeah, I still think the BYU game is going to be looked back at as more frustrating, just because of how much you dominated a really good team. But that Colorado one, I think that's the right word, Rob. That is going to be the haunting loss, I think, when you look back on this season. Whether it ends 7-5, 9-3, 8-4, that loss is going to be looked back at the time. This wasn't a loss at the time that seemed, that's not a great loss, and then it aged horribly. That was a horrible loss at the time, and it's somehow aging even worse.
Yeah.
Ugh. It's hard to even talk about that.
Sorry to bring it up.
Woof. Poor Colorado. That was a rough showing out in Salt Lake City last week. Ben, so you wrote a big story about black uniforms, and I'm very interested on your perspective on these as someone who came into this media scene just a couple years ago and someone who's only seen Iowa State from afar. What are your thoughts on the black uniforms, and tell us a little bit about your article.
Yeah, this was one that, as somebody who plopped into the Iowa State media scene, as you said, Jake, just over a year ago, I was fascinated by. Why is Iowa State wearing all of these black uniforms? And I really found that so many Cyclone fans had similar questions. So I started this summer trying to work on a story and answer some of those questions of why Iowa State wears black, why that's become a color that the football program has embraced. And I'll tell you, I wasn't surprised at all to see them wear those black uniforms on Saturday against BYU. I think it's a color that they turn to when they need a mentality switch. Jeremiah Cooper said, whenever I put on these black uniforms, I feel like a villain. I want to go out there and hit somebody. Just an awesome quote that really tells you how much these players like these uniforms. 9 of the 10 guys I talked to on the team this summer said some variant of the all white or the all black was their favorite. So I think Iowa State went to it as kind of a last resort almost, as a, hey, what can we do to kind of snap ourselves in? And the black uniforms ultimately weren't enough. Just so much fun stuff in this story, guys. I put together a pie graph of Iowa State's color palette since Matt Campbell got in here. Yeah, thanks, Aiden. You can see it there. A lot of white and a lot of black, over 50%, those two colors. Of course, a lot of red in there too. I have a fun quote about the yellow. Why you never see any of that. Skip Brabnick, the equipment manager, the head equipment guy, told me, Matt Campbell doesn't like it, so you can either have Matt Campbell or you can have the yellow uniforms, which is maybe why we've only seen that color in 0.8% of games since 2016. So check out that story if you're curious about the uniforms. Thank you so much for getting back to me. A lot of fans who listen to this show, the beat reporters, were ones who came at me with some different opinions about those black uniforms. Some fun graphics and charts I dropped in the Twitter below the post. So check that out. A lot of uniform junkies.
Well, first off, great work, Ben. That takes a lot of really hard work to go through that research and to throw all that together. I'm glad they don't wear gold. I think it looks bad.
It's mustard yellow. They would wear the mustard yellow kind of. I think that's.
I can be a uniform junkie, and if I had a hot take, if I was hired as the next Iowa State president, which, breaking news, guys, I'm not one of the 4 finalists. I tried, don't worry. If I was named the next Iowa State president, my first day on the job, I would switch Iowa State's colors to Cardinal and then like Florida State gold or Notre Dame gold, because at that point it'd be awesome gold, but the mustard yellow is terrible. Rob, what do you think about the black uniforms?
Well, I think it's very much a Campbellism, and it's very much reflective of his players. Ben talked about the great quotes they got. It gives them this feeling of, and they've worn them in so many big moments. I mean, the 2000 year, it felt like it was almost exclusive, and they've lost in them in big moments, but they've won in them in big moments. And, when you feel like you're not executing well and maybe the game's getting in your head a little bit and it's not a lot of fun, why not put on that proverbial black hat and say, I'm the bad man here, and I'm going to go in and impose your will, do all kinds of things, which, again, they have been doing on the ground, which is positive. But I agree. I mean, Ben, it looks like you could be doing like a doctoral thesis on the black uniforms, when I saw that scroll down going on. So I can only imagine how much time you put into that, so kudos. But it is interesting because some fans are so angry about black uniforms. You see them on Twitter, and you get the jabs from the Kansas State, a friendly jab from the Kansas State AD that prompted Campbell to come in unprompted and ask me to ask him why he likes black so much, and then go off about it. So it's really interesting to peel back those layers. So and again, your outsider's perspective is perfect here, because I never really thought a deep dive in the black uniforms could produce a whole lot of insight, and I think fresh eyes again, you could manage to do that. So really interesting topic for sure.
Do you remember when they debuted?
Oh, yeah.
Little Cyclone fanatic trivia for you. Of course, it was a big game, known for other reasons too.
Brock Purdy's first start.
Boom.
Not first game, first start. But that
big win.
And we know Brock was a fan.
Yeah, and so I guess I think my take with the black uniforms, I like to think it's very, very nuanced. Where I like them, I wish there would be a limit to a max of 2 times a year. I would prefer probably once a year, like one game, kind of like how West Virginia handles their Coal Rush uniforms. Make it an event, know before the season hey, we're rolling out the black uniforms for the Arizona State. We're rolling them out for the Big 12 title game rematch. And part of the reason I think that, and maybe didn't think that 3 years ago or 5 years ago, I think Iowa State's primary uniforms now are better than what they used to be. I think you throw that script on a Cardinal or a white helmet, I just think it looks better than it does on a black helmet now. And that used to not be the case. In 2019, Iowa State's best uniform was the all black. Now I just don't think that's the case. I think their best look right now is the all white with the Cardinal script, the Cardinal letters. But again, it's a uniform. I don't get too caught up in it. I would prefer the once, maybe twice a year.
Yeah. Last thing I'll add. Oh, go ahead, bro.
I was just going to say, it's so popular with the players, though. And that's the thing.
That's the important part.
You're always going to defer to that. And I think, oddly, to some extent, they kind of recruit to it a little bit. I mean, hey, look at this cool uniform we're going to throw out there. You know, we're Cardinal and gold, but you're going to wear the all blacks whenever you guys feel like it feels like. But, yeah, that's all I had to add.
I think the most important statistic is Matt Campbell has won 72.2% of his games in the all-black uniforms. And maybe that's the thing that matters most. The one thing I'll throw out, I heard a lot of from fans, is if Iowa State were to add an element of Cardinal onto the all-black uniforms, that would maybe, give them a little bit of the Cardinal and gold with the coolness of the all-black. And I heard some of the Iowa State volleyball team pulls that look off pretty well. So I think there is some room for fans to say, hey, you could throw a little bit of Cardinal trim onto the black, and I think that would make a lot of people happy.
Good point.
Yeah, Rob made a good point on recruiting. You see a lot of recruits. I don't know what the number would be. I don't want to put words in the program's mouth, but I see a lot of recruits posting pictures in the all-black uniforms, and that above anything else means more than my opinion or Billy from Story City's opinion or so-and-so opinion. Like, if the recruits like it, if the players like it, if the coaches like it, at the end of the day, that's a little more important. My only rule, never, ever pull out the uniforms that were worn against Miami ever again last year. The black helmet, white uniform, black pants. It looked like practice uniforms. It was terrible. So never do that again. That's my
good result, though. Thrilling result in that game.
That's my only rule. I can't even watch back that game or watch back the highlights. The uniforms hurt my eyes so bad. Well, Ben, thanks for getting us into uniform talk. We'll probably get a lot of engagement in the comment section because it's a passionate topic. What people should be passionate about, though, is our good friends at the Farm Story Meats. I've been hearing a lot about this Meat Fest, the Festival of Meats in the RV Village with Chris Williams and Brendan Cooper on Saturday. Like Farm Story Meats would be the perfect sponsor of the Festival of Meats. You can place any orders on meat bundles. They do have a tailgating meat bundle that would be awesome for this Saturday. It'd be great for the final home game on November 15th. You can check all of those out at the meat shop page on farmstorymeats.com. It is family raised, safe, and it is awesome. A great quality of meat, and we want to thank them for sponsoring the Beat Reporters here in the Northwest Bank studios. How about some basketball talk, gentlemen? The Final Four is back on as Iowa State beats Northwestern in an exhibition game to move to an impressive 0-0 on the season. What a win for the Cyclones! And no, I'm kidding. I thought the reaction on social media was funny when you had some people who way overreacted to Creighton and maybe didn't react at all to Northwestern. Like, oh, now I got to see it in a real game. And you saw some people who were like, oh my gosh, how could you take anything from that Creighton game, that were then like thrilled after the Northwestern game? And the answer, I think, is always somewhere in the middle. My question to you guys is, what positive takeaway can you take away from a win like that? And what did you see from the team that can carry over into the regular season?
Well, the real positive sorry, Ben, took away is the continued evolution of Dominic Nelson as I think, a potential star in this rotation. His instincts on defense are great. He makes some of those plays, disrupting the passing lanes. His length is huge. He's got the it factor there. I think he's going to be a steals machine. And, he's worked on his shooting. Yeah, there's no doubt that was the big knock on him while becoming WAC Player of the Year at Utah Valley. Great slasher, not a great free throw shooter. Well, he was not great at Creighton, but great against Northwestern. So he's worked on stuff with Eric Crawford and the staff. And if he can shoot the ball at a solid rate, I think he's a guy that could really, really make a huge impact on this team. And besides him, I think two other takeaways. Joshua Jefferson is so good that when he puts up good numbers, what was it, 18 and 12 against Creighton and 17 and 7 and whatever it was, I can't remember the total against Northwestern, everyone just kind of yawns. He's going to get his triple-double this year. He all but guaranteed it to me on media day when he's flirted with it a few times. And the last thing is Killian Torre, who I wrote about after the game, kind of tried to have a little bit of fun with when Northwestern coach Chris Collins, who of course son of former NBA great head coach Doug Collins, played for Duke. He's seen a lot of things, hadn't seen Hilton. That high praise for Hilton, even though it's an exhibition game and it wasn't full and it wasn't anything like a real game day atmosphere, just a taste of it. But he said he was a fan of Killian Torre, and, quote, he looks like he was born to play there. And that said from a guy in France, a stone's throw from the Republic of Andorra, closer to Spain than Paris. So
that's a stat right there. That's a Rob Gray stat right there.
Yeah. I mean, so his basketball IQ, you almost expect that crazy, weird attempt swipe at the ball after that missed shot that caroms high up the backboard and goes in for him as a putback. That's just the result of a guy that plays that hard and is that smart and is physically gifted. He's also got length, speed, power. He's put together for a true freshman. I think he's going to be hugely important, particularly on the defensive end, even when Tamin Lipsey comes back. So those are my biggest takeaways from the team, along with the fact the defense has to be better. I think we're fine against Northwestern, but they're still giving up too many open looks in three. It's kind of built for that. If you don't force a turnover, there are going to be a lot of open looks. But I think this defense will continue to get better. And, of course, when Tamin Lipsey's in the lineup, it's instantly better.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think I'm in step with you, Rob, on everything. I just think the Killian Torre development has easily been the biggest positive for me through these two games. And Nelson's weird, and we know how TJ Augsburger uses these press conferences. Like, sometimes this is, hey, I'm going to go motivate my guys, and this is how I'm going to do it. So I wouldn't say I was turned off to the Dom Nelson role going into the season, but at media day, when TJ said, between Tamin, Torre, Bateman, Heisey, this is the best perimeter defense we've had since my first year here. And he's like, and our challenge is for Dom Nelson to get there. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, maybe this Nelson won't be able to play defense. And then he shows up in the Creighton game and the Northwestern game, and he's active hands. So maybe that was just as simple as a little public motivation to get Nelson to that level.
Bring it every day, every possession. Yeah.
So he was a bit of a surprise. But for me, Torre is, I'm not going to call him a copy, but very similar to a young Tamin Lipsey. And it's funny because I was talking to one of the Northwestern video guys that I sat next to at the game on Sunday. And it just so happened that he was really good friends with Jeremiah Williams, who's a somewhat former Cyclone, never got to see the court. But Ben, this is probably a little lore that I'm not sure if you're familiar with. I'm sure you know about AJ Green and how close he was to being a Cyclone. Well, that offseason, heading into Tamin's freshman year, hypothetically, you're supposed to have AJ Green, and then you have Jeremiah Williams, who is this defensive point guard from Temple, tear his Achilles preseason. So Taman goes from probably point guard 3 to starting point guard, and he had to respond on the fly, night in, night out. He had no room really to make mistakes because it was, Taman, you're playing, or like we're going down with Taman, win or lose. And that was really good for him long term. If he could have had 12 minutes a game or 15 minutes a game, he would have been so effective that freshman year. And that's what I'm expecting out of Torrey this year, to be the relief guy for Taman. And I think what I've seen from him, he's played 20 minutes each of the first 2 games. He looks like he's going to make a really good 15-minute-a-night player. And that could be more important to this team than anything else, just for giving Taman a break to say, look, Taman, we've got another guy who's going to come in here, throw his body around, get on the floor for loose balls. I think that's been the biggest development that I've seen so far.
My breaking news takeaway from Sunday's win was Iowa State isn't going to go this entire season without making a 3.
Yep.
After an 0 for 14 game at Creighton, where Iowa State, had some bad misses. The shots were not great looks, and they weren't close. It kind of raised, some questions of, man, could this be something that Iowa State struggles with, throughout the season to shoot 3-pointers at an efficient clip? And that remains to be seen. I'm not going to make a judgment on one game or the other, but you certainly feel a lot better about Iowa State's prospects after a 9 for 22 effort, 9 of 22. And the guy I want to highlight is Nate Heisey, who makes 5 of his 7 3-pointers. Guys, how big would it be for this team if Nate Heisey can hit the ground running? We saw how important he was at about mid-February, when he really found his shot and finished as one of the better 3-point shooters in that NCAA tournament. He was maybe the guy you wanted shooting those shots, but it took him almost 3 months to get there. And I asked Nate after the game, I said, how much different was this summer in Iowa State's system compared to that first summer? And Nate said it was so much different. He just felt more comfortable. The familiarity with Otzelberger's regimented program is tough. And I think he said for anybody, you'd expect a little bit more comfort the second time around in that. So not saying Nate's going to be 5 of 7 every game, but if he can be somewhat consistent from that 3-point range and as an offensive scorer, man, that would be so big for the Cyclones early in this season.
No doubt. And he had to be down the stretch last season with Lipsy's injury eventually, and obviously the deal with Keyshawn happening. And Jake, back to your point on, and he responded, but to your point on Toure being like Lipsy, well, we kind of saw it in that Northwestern game too, right? I mean, how rough shooting from 3 was Taman as a freshman, I think 20%.
Yeah.
And then Crawford worked with him and he got to a very, very respectable level. Toure, air ball, open 3, makes open 3, air balls 3. So, that's going to be rough at times probably, but just by his tenacity, again, that tip end is completely illustrative of that. I mean, he's going to get some buckets that people don't expect, just like Taman would off the drive as a freshman, or even on some short floaters and this here and there. So great point on Heisey too, Ben, because if he can be a consistent guy, and if he can handle he won't shoot it great sometime, but then come back the next game like they're imploring Milan Momcilovic to do, which look at, they improved from the 3-point line with Milan still struggling there, as he has through both exhibitions. I think it all bodes very well for this team and certainly elevates its ceiling.
I don't know if a ton of people will agree with this because Heisey is such a polarizing player for some reason. I don't really get it. I think Heisey's super cold stretch last year, it's safe to call that an outlier. Like his entire time at UNI, he was a decent to good shooter the entire time. I also think the end of his last season is an outlier. Like he's going to be somewhere in between that. But what Heisey said was he had a confidence problem for the first time in his life. And when I talked to him on Media Day, he said that once he was able to get over that hump, once he got over those massive confidence issues, they were pretty much gone. And I still think that's probably true of him, where yes, he's going to probably go through cold spells like any player does, like any shooter does, but he's going to be able to overcome that and be in between that 35 and 40 range, if I had to guess.
And again, it's only an exhibition, but Heisey was the guy who stepped up when Northwestern cut the lead down to 4. I think Heisey had back-to-back buckets after that. He was the guy hunting for the shot when the game got tight late, which is, I think, a sign of ultimate confidence.
Yeah, and a little swagger I think we see from Nate Heisey there too. Not and again, I think that dovetails into the talk about seeing his confidence flag for the first time in his career and having to overcome that, which he did, and coming in this season with that confidence. Again, if he can consistently give you 8+ per game, Iowa State is so much better. And then and when he does it, how much it frees up Joshua Jefferson. Blake Buchanan hasn't done much yet. He's going to help in that regard too. We saw flashes from Mulder in the Northwestern game, nice steal and dunk. I mean, a lot of intriguing pieces here. And I expect early in the season that TJ's probably maybe going to go deeper with his rotation than he maybe ever has, at least early on.
Yeah, rotation I think is a good place to go from here because in my eyes, there's of course, the starting 5 is probably set. But I still think there's probably only 2 roles that are completely defined. And that's Taman's role and Jefferson's role. I don't think I would throw Milan in there yet because, like, eventually he's just got to make shots. You can say all offseason that we need to get him this many shots, but eventually, if he's not making them, if he's not creating those shots, he's probably just not going to have as big of a role as planned. And again, that's out there for him to earn it. I guess my prediction with the rotation, I'm with you, Rob. I think they play 10 guys. I think they play 10 guys, especially these first 2 games, and you know what you're going to get out of Taman and Jefferson and probably all the starters. But from that point, we know Otzelberger's not going to go 10 deep in the NCAA tournament. We know he's not going to go 10 deep in February. I think those 3, maybe 4 bench spots are just going to be earned on the court and earned between those 10 guys who he clearly trusts enough to put in the game based off of practice. But eventually practice has to turn into performance. And I'm really curious to see how long of a leash he goes with the 10-man bench. Does he do it for a lot of these cupcake non-conference games? Does he do it against Mississippi State? I'm not sure on that part, but I'd say with a lot of confidence that we see all 10 go out there on Monday night.
Yeah, and with Milan, I mean, track record, he's gone through rough stretches before, and these were 2 exhibition games. He's clearly working on aspects of his game, defensive rebounding. He looks to improve.
Yes. Defense
looks to have improved. I really, that's one I take nothing from, his massive struggles from 3 in these 2 exhibition games, because that guy, he shot at 41-ish, 42%, whatever it was last year. He's gonna get there.
Yeah, I guess I didn't say bench. I didn't mean bench Milan.
Oh yeah, no.
But I think his role.
I didn't get that implication either.
I think his role can vary from Milan. You are the guy every single time down the floor to maybe he is just like the third option who we want to space the floor. And I think that kind of varies based off of his production. But you're right, Rob. It is certainly way too early to tell that through 2 games that don't count.
The role I'm curious about is who fills the Curtis Jones role? Who's the 6th guy who can sometimes come in and give you 35 minutes a night? If I've seen anything in these first couple games, specifically in the exhibition against Northwestern, Dominic Nelson provided such a spark coming in and, immediately making a defensive play. He provides a spark differently than Kurt did, where it's immediate offense and, you look for him to get a 3-pointer. Nelson came in, got a steal. Defensively, he's such a beast, and you can expect that, right off the bench. And I believe TJ actually used that as an example of, hey, this was kind of the Curtis Jones thing where you bring him in as the 6th man, and he's just an instant jump to whatever you're trying to do. I would maybe Dominic Nelson could be in a little bit of that role.
Yeah, good point.
I'm with you, Ben.
Yeah, and Nelson hit a 3 too against Northwestern. So he can, and his ability to get the free throw line, if he can hit at 75% plus, which he was nowhere near, I mean, that is a huge boost to the offense. Scoring points with no time coming off the clock, set your defense, suffocate the opposing offense. I mean, he is, what did TJ call Kurt when he was coming off the bench last season? The, quote, sixth starter, unquote. He looks to be, the leader in the clubhouse for that role at this point, for sure. Early point.
He goes 6 for 6 from the free throw line, just to give our watchers some data there, and that's so big, especially considering how often he gets to the free throw line. One of the best guys at getting fouled in the nation.
Yeah.
Well, and when you compare it to what he did against Creighton, which I don't have the number, 3 for 6, and that's probably equivalent to 3 for 8 because I know he missed a couple 1-on-1s also. Mm-hmm. So if he doesn't have to be 6 for 6 every night, but you're right, Rob. If he can be in that 75-80 range, that is massive. I think that 6-man conversation is interesting because it's not as simple as can you come in and produce right away. It's that mindset that you mentioned, Ben. The reason it worked with Kurt is because he had that humility to do it. I'm not going to put this and say like, oh, would Keyshawn do that? But I don't know. Would Keyshawn do that? And that's where it's kind of something that Otzelberger has to balance, and that's what I think he's really, really good at is knowing the personalities of his players. And maybe Nelson is that type of guy who might thrive in that role to come in the game and know exactly what the team needs and go out and do it. Maybe it could be Heisey. We don't know. I certainly think Heisey would have that mindset to be able to do that. I think it's really it's a really important position at Iowa State to be the sixth man and come in and provide a spark. And I'm sure TJ loves that about his program.
Agreed.
Do you guys want to talk some wrestling? We're all at Media Day. Maybe go round table, do one takeaway from Media Day. Rob, I'll defer to you first.
Well, outside of the obvious, which is former bitter rivals Rocky Elam, who when he was at Missouri, and younger Bastida at 197, man, they had some real bouts, and he talked about that a bit on Media Day. And now Elam, four-time All-Americans, presumably going to be Iowa State's 197-pounder, and younger's been at heavyweight for a while and back and healthy. Anthony Echemendia, he really recounted his struggles last season. I mean, we knew he'd battled the injury. He tried to come back. They thought he could come back. And then he's suddenly hospitalized. And as he's hospitalized, he told the story that he told the doctor, okay, we're going to have to put off this surgery. His ankle is ballooning. He doesn't really know why. And he's telling the doctor, it's a month to the NCAAs. I got to help my team. I got to go out there and try to win. And the doctor just said, no, you don't understand. If this goes, he had a metal plate inserted with his ankle injury earlier. If this goes from the metal to the bone, we'll have to cut off your leg. Or you could die or lose your life. I can't remember the words he used. And he said that really humbled him, and he made him realize he's not just a wrestler. And I think it's easy as competitors to lose sight of that. And he said he talked to himself and said, you know what? I just want to be able to walk. I mean, he was recently married, and had a serious girlfriend at the time who was by his side, now his wife, of course. And to get that perspective from a guy who came up through Cuba, went through Ohio State, now at Iowa State, a lot of good times, a lot of hard times, I think that's really going to help him. I mean, a former All-American, a guy that can give you a ton. That's just A, what a harrowing story, and also B, just the candor in which he, described the chain of events and who he is now. And that was really intriguing to me, and something I'm going to explore in a deeper feature story down the road. Yeah,
I love talking to Kevin Dresser. He just is a real person. I love Kevin Dresser, man. He tells it like it is, and he'll tell you he's an old school guy. You get that vibe immediately when you see him, and he's told us how he's really started to embrace maybe the transfer portal and some of these newer aspects of college wrestling. So I'm curious to see how that translates to his team this season. I mean, getting Rocky Elam. What a high profile get. And he comes in, Rocky told us, why'd you come to Iowa State? He had been training with Younger. Those two guys had just really hit it off. And Rocky said, hey, I'm going to take a few weeks, to maybe make a decision here. And then in 3 days, he had decided to be a Cyclone. So just a bunch of different ways to get it done in modern college wrestling, I think, with NIL and recruiting, and also some of the old school just personal relationships and what a program is. I think Kevin Dresser's built a program here that's very athlete friendly, and I think players are liking it. So the wrestlers are liking it. So I'm curious to see what those guys look, and I'll give a shout out to the Frost brothers. Man, I love a good twin story. Aren't those guys the best? I can't wait to see what they do. The Frost brothers.
Real good stuff, Ben. The Frost brothers are great. My takeaway kind of piggybacks off of your takeaway, and it's what Kevin Dresser and a lot of the wrestlers that Jacqueline Cordova talked to also. When you bring in a lot of transfers, it can screw up the dynamic of a room, like in any sport. And what Dresser said he was surprised by, and he was thrilled at it, was how the wrestlers reacted when they brought in these key transfers. You bring in Rocky Elam to be most likely your 197, and you've got guys in the 197 weight class who are retweeting and saying, let's go, we brought in this guy. And I think especially in a sport like wrestling, that's really important, because kind of like we were talking a little bit off air, it's the one sport where bulletin board material doesn't really exist, or the fear of bulletin board material doesn't really exist. And these wrestlers know they're going to face off against each other. They know, hey, if we're bringing in Rocky Elam and he's at my weight, I've got to beat him in a wrestle off. And if I don't, that means we're putting the best guy out there. And I think that was just cool to hear from Dresser. And it sounded like that's echoed throughout the locker room, that this team is really tight-knit, and they're ready to go to war and ready to prove some people wrong after a tough last season when they dealt with a ton of injuries.
Yeah, Dresser said they're healthy, so that makes you think, okay, we're excited to see it.
He also said at that time last year they thought they were going to be another trophy contending team, and then all that stuff happened. So I'm sure he's doing a lot of knocking on wood or whatever you want to do to make sure that holds. Because as he said, when they got the fourth place trophy the previous season, well, they decided how were they going to go about things. Well, hey, let's do it the exact same way, and they got a bunch of guys injured, so you can't really control fate in that regard. And the wrestlers in particular are always banged up by the time they get to March. I mean, we see that in other sports, but I think particularly true in that sport. So yeah, I mean, it very good, has been said, to be healthy at this point, and obviously hugely important for it to hold. And again, the transfers. I mean, if the other guys who thought they would start and don't win the wrestle-offs become really good depth pieces and are motivated, maybe the injuries don't hurt quite as much as they did last season too.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that's a good stopping point for this week's episode of the Beat Reporters. It's crossover season, so we can just cross over from sport to sport, and it's a fun time here with Ben and Rob in the Northwest Bank Studios. We'll do it again next week. We'll have a basketball game to react to, a big football game the following Saturday, depending on what happens this Saturday. So we will be here on the Beat Reporters next Thursday in the Northwest Bank Studios. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you then.